Welcome to the Women Inspire Aspire podcast. In this episode, I talk to Divya Shah about industrial psychology. Hi Divya, welcome to the show. Would you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you so much for having me here. I belong from psychology background. I have done my master's in industrial psychology. It is a combination of management, behavioral science, psychology, and design. So this field I am from around 4 or 5 years. Right now I'm working with corporates in learning and development field. I started my journey with startups and now I work with MNCs doing the same.
That sounds great. How did you get fascinated with psychology? Can you give a bit of background how you got into psychology?
Yes, studying human behavior was quite fascinating, but honestly, it was not my idea. The idea of whether to do or psychology or not came through an inspiration from my mother. I never wanted to be in rat race, so she suggested, "Why don't you research about this field?" So I researched, and this is one of the areas where I found that even in my personal life, I could implement it equally apart from my profession. So it fascinated me the way behavioral processes are or the thinking patterns are evaluated. That helped me cause my interest in that area, and then I took a faith of leap and joined it.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful to know. So, tell us a bit about industrial psychology. What exactly is industrial psychology, and how did you choose industrial psychology against all the other areas of psychology?
So, industrial psychology is a very emerging field. The choice of choosing industrial psychology was difficult as there were no career prospects for industrial psychologists in India. So, if you go to corporate, they have to work with HR. There is no single position for IO psychologists in India even today. But since I chose it because I could find a vision or future in the field, before deciding which field to go, I went through a practical internship for each one. So in India, there are three major fields of psychology: counseling, clinical, and industrial. So I went through clinical internships and I figured out like that is not what intrigues me. Out of clinical and counseling and industrial, I saw that industrial had lot of scope, and this is the area where I wanted to contribute. Now, IO psychology is a wide umbrella wherein we can use behavioral techniques and behavioral skills for the welfare of employees. It could be through counseling, it could be through learning, it could be through assessing the employees for their wellness, their engagement, satisfaction, their commitment, lot of variables which were thought not to be very important earlier, but nowadays which contribute to major part of employees' well-being.
So, how do you think the change in the attitude came in the corporates and companies that industrial psychology is important for the employee well being?
This change was going to come eventually, but the duration got fastened because of COVID. This is one of the things which, accelerated this change. So the need for IO psychology came earlier because of pandemic when people were working from home. They had to balance their life and there were a lot of job loss, mental well-being of people were being affected. That is one of the reason that this change was triggered. Apart from that, I think it was also trial and error. The old management techniques, they tried carrot and stick technique, corporate punishment, traditional techniques to regulate the behavior. And when they failed over a period of time, the methodology got evolved. So then people started the whole approach to this change. And eventually people started thinking about organizations as more about the people rather than policies and procedures. So the shift on mindset came eventually with the need, as it was so huge that it was affecting their business or numbers. They could see that shift in small behaviors or processes for employees, which would lead to their well-being, was actually linked to their profits as well. So when they were able to see that the management policies changed, which were both better for employees and also a wise decision to do.
Yeah, that's great. So that's quite interesting to know. Let's talk about your role. I see that you are into learning and development. Can you elaborate a bit about how you implement learning and development as a field of industrial psychology, and How do you do that on a day-to-day basis?
That sounds like an interesting question. So, for me, learning and development, I try to use my knowledge of industrial psychology in delivering and designing learning interventions. So, for example, this traditional classrooms or even the online courses become monotonous at one point of time. After certain durations, people are not able to focus or not able to sit in one place and dedicate that much mental resources as they used to do before. So there is a shift in mental capacity. So when I design training programs which are mostly oriented towards leadership, we ensure that it is not monotonous, it is interactive, plus it is designed in a way that they can collaborate and come out of the solutions themselves rather than someone coming and teaching them about leadership, how everyone has their own leadership style or even learning style. So how can you make your own path towards the success? That is the idea that I try to incorporate in my learning and development programs.
That's wonderful. So, do you work with individuals or with groups?
I work with both individuals and groups. However, it depends on the nature of the project. And like I said, for leadership, sometimes individual coaching, mentoring, or assessments are more useful. At mid or junior level, we try to work with groups as they can learn from each other and they go through a similar phase. So the setup facilitates their learning much faster. And there are also strategies which we implement wherein we have programs wherein individual and groups they merge together to come up with a solution. So it is like a stimulation wherein people are put together based on the outcome of the project. However, like you asked, I do work with both the population, but the strategies which I cater to them are quite different.
Can you share some interesting experiences that you had during the course of your working? Some interesting interactions or some funny kind of things that happened in day to day work?
Sure, sure. So we had this very interesting programs about leadership. They have around 3,000 to 5,000 Jawans under them. I wouldn't say employees because they are forces. Management has evolved so much that we think management is about corporate. However, when you look at it, the way they execute, the way they perform, it is just amazing. The way they come up with solutions, even in such a very restrictive setup wherein there are a lot of hierarchies. Now, the way they keep themselves and their Jawans motivated is something which I find to be very intrigued with. The techniques, the simple methods, the real science or management we can learn from them or their experiences. Based on my experience, I have dealt with international people from different countries, leaders, corporate facilitators, young scientists all around the globe. However, this one particular group I have found to be very humble, down to earth, also at the same time, great example of leadership.
That's wonderful. So, can you share some challenges that you have faced in your work?
First challenge that I faced was finding a job which was relevant to my field. So, as an industrial psychologist, you'll find many people go into HR. They can't find job into IO. That is the most relevant or next easiest thing to do. So, as an industrial psychologist, I started with startup, which were really small organizations but focused on pure IO work. So finding a job which gives you relevant career is very difficult. Even today, it is a niche field which is not much explored and people are not much aware about it. For example, when I started my internship, it was for 9 months. However, they were not sure about how what kind of training or what kind of exposure should be given to these people because they were not aware about our skill set or our background, what can we really do or how can we really contribute. But thanks to the present, awareness has increased a lot and now people are curious about industrial psychologists. Managements are also supporting because of the evolving needs of present time. However, it is still at times not considered equivalent to MBA HR. So coming from a very niche field sometimes has its drawbacks, and these are some of the challenges which I often face.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. What are the tips that you would like to give for the freshers who are entering the field?
First thing I would like to say is don't jump to something that you can easily achieve. It might take a while. Stick to the field because it has a bright future. It is a very emerging and upcoming field which will always have demand because since there are people, till the people are there, IO psychology will be there. The employees are there, it will be there. Second thing, psychology is more about an application rather than a subject. If you want to grow in IO psychology, it is not about theory you know or which degree did you take. It is about how well are you able to apply it into your real life problems and how well are you able to help your employees or an organization at a larger level. How do you promote their well-being? So I think that is a key that if we take forward, we'll definitely be successful.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that input. What are your future aspirations as an industrial psychologist? What are your future plans?
I would like to revolutionize the field of HR because at least for next few years it is going to be part of it, but the way or the approach it should have should be differentiated in a sense from the traditional mindset which is fixed. I want to help organizations go towards growth mindset wherein revenue is important, but employee satisfaction is more important. Employee engagement is not just measured in terms of how many activities they do, but how much are they willing to do for the organization, their commitment, their drive, their inherent motive. So the whole metrics of the things which we are measuring should evolve with the current needs of the employee and how well the organization fulfilling it and how well employees contributing for the growth of the organization at the same time in a more human and scientific way. That is my goal.
That's wonderful. Let's talk about the challenges that we have in the society around us. What are the challenges that you see in the society around you? And as the psychologist, how would you address them? What will be your approach on addressing those challenges?
One of the biggest challenge which I find today among all the generations is managing themselves. Since most of our schedules now are so tied up, we have one thing coming after another. Almost everyone has a very fixed time slot and trying to figure out for themselves. I somewhere feel for most people, education has become like a rat race, and managing oneself has become very difficult because people are not much aware about what are their needs, what is it that will make them happy. Focus is on wrong thing, and because of which most of us are suffering. The idea is that it is a common challenge even abroad. It is not specific to India. It is something very critical which should be addressed before it is too late and we become so unconscious that we keep on repeating same things without knowing where do we want to go.
And how do you plan to address that?
Addressing this is little challenging because it has to be someone's choice to address that. As a person, if someone asks me, like, if I can help them address it, maybe I can help them increase their own awareness about themselves and they can decide how do they want to go about it. But again, it is like I said, it is a choice. Many times the entire life passes and people don't bother thinking about these things. So it's a perspective.
You are absolutely right. I totally agree with you on that. So, you have given a whole lot of information on the subject about industrial psychology. Thank you so much for all the inputs. Let's talk about you and what do you do in your free time? Do you have any hobbies or interests apart from work?
I am very dynamic as a person. I have varied interests. I go for trekking. I have started learning boxing. Then I teach French. I do like art and paint. Then I do like gardening, nature. As a person, I am quite creative and compassionate at the same time. In today's scenario, it is very difficult for me to commit certain amount of time for hobbies, but I try to read and explore the world as much as I can.
Wow, that sounds pretty interesting, and you sound like an art person. I wish you all the best in your career as an industrial psychologist and whatever you aspire to do in your life. And thank you so much for spending time with us and talking to us in this podcast. I wish you all the best. Thank you, Divya.
Thank you.
That was a great podcast with Divya Shah. Please subscribe to this channel and follow it for more awesome podcasts. Opinions expressed by the guests in this podcast are their own. The host or the sponsors of the podcast do not condone the opinions expressed by the guests or the actions arising out of those opinions. Any decisions or actions that the listeners might take as a result of listening to this podcast must be based on their own judgment and will be at their own risk. The podcast host or their sponsors will not be held responsible for the consequences of any actions and or decisions taken as a result of any content in this podcast.